I have, yeah. So, that means we get to start, Bradley. I met Bradley, we were trying to remember. It probably was at Left Coast Writers, which is a testament to this group. It's been going so long, and we've all made such wonderful contacts and friends here. I love Left Coast Writers. Anyway, we're pretty sure that's where we met.
Our Travel Writers Conference?
Might have been the Travel Writers Conference,
Yeah.
which also we can vouch for. It's a terrific conference, so if any of you are interested in travel writing, August, this is the place to be. It's a wonderful conference, and you can talk to us about that if you have any questions about it. At any rate.
Yeah.
And we were in a writers group together, the Itinerants. Michael Shapiro's here. He was in that with us. Clear at the back. And then we worked together on websites.
Yeah.
Bradley has built websites for lots and lots of writers here in the Bay Area. But he doesn't do that anymore.
Not at all. Not at all.
And then, Camille, hi. Camille was another itinerant. Welcome. And I think now, I think I'd like you to tell us the story of how you made the transition from being someone who was putting together websites and doing a good job of it, but not really that happy doing it, to you're living the dream, man.
Yeah.
So Bradley's moved to Europe with his family. He lives there full time now. He originally went for a year, and that changed.
Yeah.
So tell us how that happened.
How that happened. That's the story of which is pretty much it is on.
Okay.
The story of which is pretty much in this book. It's the story of transition. It's a story of change, and how I went from what I call dreaming the dream to living the dream. And I write quite a bit about how it's a whole lot easier to dream the dream, because dream the dream, you don't actually have to take any action. Dream the dream, you can talk about it, you can pretend to do it, you can plan for it, you can talk about it at dinner parties, and if people get tired of your story at dinner parties, just go to different dinner parties and tell them the same story again, but don't actually take any action towards living your dream. And that is the recipe for success, of never actually achieving your dream, but that's okay, because you've been talking about it for so long, you don't really care anymore, and you're just going to continue. You're going to be content with dreaming the dream. But if you're deep inside tired of that, and would like to make that transition from the dreaming part to the actual living part, then you hit rewind.
You have to come over here so you're not taking a picture through the orchid.
I think there's a moment that's not even action. I think before action, there's an important step that is internal, and that's decision. You make a decision. It's internal. It's your decision. Nobody's going to help you make it, or no external factors are going to definitely influence it one way or the other. They might sway it a little bit, but it has to come from within. And this is a decision to basically go forward or not. We talked about a Shawshank Redemption quote that I loved. Get busy dying or get busy living. And you have a choice. And for me, one big external factor, if you have to wait for an external factor, which is what often happens, by the way, you wait for a sickness, you wait to get some nasty call from the doctor about how you only have a certain time to live, which is basically only a shorter time than your healthy life would have taken. It's just cutting it off a bit. So for me, a lot happened when my father passed away 3 years ago. And that mortality light went on, like, oh yeah, we're actually mortal. You forget these things. And I talk a lot about cats in my book. I'm not a big cat fan, I'm a dog guy, but I talk about cats because they, so goes the story, they have 9 lives. And so I say, well, if you're a cat, then you're not living the life that you want to live this life, that's okay. Just take one of the coming 8 and live the life you'd prefer to live in one of those lives. So you got it made if you're a cat, but for those of us who are not cats, as far as I know, we just have this one. And so it's just a matter of timing when you're going to make that decision to take action to start living the dream instead of dreaming the dream.
Okay, so you did that. You have now written 8 books. Yeah. This is Bradley's 6th.
Yeah.
And this one's pretty recent.
Yeah.
So those other two were a big
Yeah.
surprise. I didn't even realize that. So tell us a little bit about what every single day is about.
Okay. Every single day is. I heard this from a dentist, and he said, "Only brush the teeth you want to keep." And I thought it was a trick question at first because I thought, oh. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, but of course I want to keep all of that. And so every single day is sort of about, which teeth do you want to keep? Well, I want to keep all of them. And so how many days of your week do you want to, if you've already made that decision, how many days do you want to take action towards living that dream that you want to do? And when I say dream is a big, vague, cloudy word. But it could be anything, any goal you're after, a task you haven't done. It could be losing weight. It could be getting in shape. It could be becoming an author. It could be anything. It could be small. It could be big. But it comes down to, I would joke that it's not every other Thursday. It's not every other day or if it's not odd days. If it's odd days, what happens at the end of the month? Because there's 31st and then the 1st. Oh, now it's all gone. And so if it's just every day, it's also it's a simple decision that you no longer have to make. Because if you have already made the decision, I'm going to go for it, you now have one less decision per day that you need to make. And if you add those up, well, that's 365 a year. You have freedom, space in your mind to use that energy towards achieving what you wanted to achieve. Whereas before, you're probably using that decision power, that brain power, to decide whether or not you're going to take that step every single day, and that you just lost some of that, not to mention momentum, but you lost the energy towards going for it.
So Bradley, one of the things you talk about in the book is how to figure out what your passion is. A lot of us are, because we're writers, that's our passion, but what does a person do if they're not really quite sure what they want to commit to doing every single day?
So Ernest Hemingway wrote something like, you write 95 pages of crap for 5 pages of masterpiece, or something like that. I might have the numbers wrong. But it's basically go do what you think you're after. Give it a shot. Stop, like I was talking, stop dreaming the dream. Take action, make the decision, going to go for it. And to test the waters to see if it really is what you're after, then do it. Live your life as if this is who you are, and live your life as if you're doing your future life that you plan to live, and give it 30 days. I had a challenge where this started to write every day for 30 days. And if you give it just 30 days, give it your best, give it your all, this is who you now are, you are your future self. In that 30 days, you're going to probably be pretty clear at the end of the 30 days whether or not this is the path you want. So if she's saying, how do you maybe find your passion, give it 30 days, give it your all. And I can almost guarantee you at the end of the 30 days, you're going to have a pretty clear picture, hey, this is my thing, or hey, this is not my thing. Or you can categorize it or classify it, hey, this is sort of kind of my thing, and I'm kind of going to sort of stick with it. Or, wow, I cannot not do this thing, and I need to keep going with it, which is what happened to me.
So you started with 30 days, a commitment for 30 days to write every day, and you published every day also, because you're blogging. And what did that turn into?
So, I talk a lot about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, internal factors and external factors. So back in November 1st, 2012, a colleague, friend of mine, challenged me to write every day. And he challenged me because I was absolutely not writing every day. I wasn't writing at all. I wasn't writing any day. Maybe that's my next book.
But you were talking about it.
No day.
No.
But I was talking about it. I was whining about it. I was moping and crying about it, but I wasn't doing it. And I needed some sort of push. And so he said, all right, you know what? He had a project called Monthly Experiments. And he said, do something for 30 days. He had stopped drinking coffee. He had, wake up at 5. He had stop work at 5. And you would do this thing for a month and basically treat it as an experiment. And his philosophy with treating it as an experiment was that you couldn't fail. You would only learn, like experiments. You learn, oh, I learned this, or oh, I learned that. Oh, wow, I'm actually really not a morning person. Or, wow, that coffee, I really didn't need that in my life, and now I'm happy to be without it. So with me, he really challenged me, and that day one was really scary, because now I've been writing since that November 1st, 2012, every single day, and I haven't stopped. I'm at day 2037. And now it's back to the
Pretty cool.
toothbrushing. I just write every day. It's not a decision. It's not even close to a decision. I just do it. But it started with the 30 days. And somewhere day 20 or so, a little bit of momentum kicked in. Because those first days were really rough. They were not fun. It was painful. And they often say as a writer, how do you write? You open a vein and spill the blood. And that's what it felt like those first days. But I built a bit of momentum in the first few weeks. And at day 30, I basically said, well, that wasn't so hard. And then I kept going. Then I haven't stopped.
What about that idea of failing small? That's one of the things that you write about, and it's kind of related to that experimental.
It is. It's very, I think fear is such a huge block. And we don't do a lot of things we'd like to do because of fear, and usually fear of failure. And I try to teach my kids this, but failure is a good thing. This is very Silicon Valley. But failure is a fantastic thing. You learn more from failure than you do from success. When my kids both play basketball, and if they miss a shot, their brain, even subconsciously, their brain calculates what they did wrong and can work on it to fix it for the next shot. If they make a shot, they don't think about it so much. So you fail and fail small, fail often, fail small, fail soon, but that means you got to do it. You got to take the shot, right? You got to take the shot to see if you make it or not, and then of course you're not going to make all of them. The ones you miss, what'd you do wrong? How do you fix it? How do you then align that? And so from a writing perspective, it's writing, it's getting it out there. It's taking that challenge of not writing at all to writing, to daring to write. And it's funny for me that I think back 2,000 days ago, and sometimes I have a hard time even relating to that guy who was so scared, who was so just fearful of any change, of any potential failure, of any even small failure. I had no confidence, I had no gung-ho, no energy, no nothing. And yet I started, and it was painful, not fun. But I think you got to get through some pain to find some rhythm. And the 30 days was a good start.
You know, a lot of people say, I like to write, but I just don't have time. And I know you have a response. You have a secret weapon.
Yeah.
Magic bullet.
Yeah. My secret weapon is just bluntly is wake up an hour earlier. I heard this tip from, I was in a writers group in San Francisco a good 15 years ago. When I first moved to this town, in 99, now it's 18 years ago or so, I immediately joined a writers group. It was a weekly writers group, and there were some hardcore real writers in there. There was some middle ground, there's some wannabes, and it was a big mix. And we met weekly. And you brought 6 pages, double spaced. You could read that, you get the feedback, and you were done. And there's one guy in there, we're working on his book, and we were all asking him, hey, how do you do this? And he said, because he was a full-time physician, and he had 2 kids. He thought, how do you even hear on a Tuesday night? You know, and how are you getting this book done? So we'd work on his book together, and then he finally got it published, and we'd meet at Lefty O'Doul's in downtown San Francisco every Tuesday night, dumpy place, and meet there for a beer and what we called beige food. And we'd talk about the books, and he said his big secret was he woke up 2 hours early every day, before his kids, before his wife, before he had to go to work, and that was his time to live his dream, to take action on a decision he made to make this writing life happen. For him, it worked out pretty well because he was Khaled Hosseini, who wrote The Kite Runner. So the 2 hours extra day, that works.
It paid off, huh?
Yeah, that could work out. So that's what I've been doing. I've also been doing, I'm a morning person anyway, but you can also find your time in the day, because you should be able to analyze yourself. When are you creative? When are you more analytical? When are the parts in the day when you are a certain way? Find those and then exploit them. I am best in the morning by a long shot. So my favorite time is also waking up early, get a jump on the day. Nobody's up, nobody's gonna call me. I'm not gonna check my email. You gotta be strong, no Facebook, no email, no social media. Get to it, because you know you have this limited time of your creative height. Take it, use it, maximize it. And then often I'm done. My day is done at 8 a.m. I've been up since 4:30, and I'm rolling on my day, on my marketing in the afternoon. But I could call my quote work day, done at 8 a.m. because I'm working my butt off, and I'm at my creative height. So I consider 2 hours in the morning worth 4 hours of afternoon time. So in a way, for me, I talk a lot about math in my book, and how this creative time, this maximized time is worth more. Those 2 hours are greater than 4. You think, Howard's greater than 4? But that's what happens.
My favorite of your chapters is the one on practice. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I have a quote in there. There's practice makes perfect, right? And I say practice is perfect, because it's a little bit there's the destination, journey versus the destination, and I think that practice is perfection, just like the journey is the destination. And so I'm shooting for practice. My goal is kind of not necessarily to write the best-selling book. My goal is to practice every day. It's gonna happen. You can have one without the other, but if you do it this way, this will happen. And so if you're shooting for your practice, if you're back to coffee, if your goal is to not drink coffee every day, your goal is to cut down your sugar every day, your goal is then much smaller, but it's going to build, and it's going to build exponentially to a larger goal. And so practice is perfect, and not practice makes perfect.
I also want you to tell people about, this is hard to believe, but Bradley made more than $23,000, right, off of one blog post?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a very fun bloggy post to write about, how I made $23,000. I think it's up to $25,000 now. $25,000 from one blog post. And so I remember my kid saw this at some point, and he sort of said, well, why don't you just do every post like that?
Good idea.
Yeah, that's some economics for you. But the true answer is, of course, okay, I'll try not to go too much on the math, but I was a math major in university, and I really like it. I use it absolutely. I could say I use it not at all in my daily life, but then again I do, because I try to sneak it in there. I even sneak it in with my kids. But you can't say it's math, because then they won't listen. Mm-hmm. But if you can give them these sneaky tidbits of math, then they'll go for it. But if you multiply anything by 0, it's still 0. I can multiply 23,000 by 0, it's still 0. So if you output 0, it's pretty easy to calculate what the potential earnings are from that 0 output. Because I don't care how hard you work, how many days you work at it, but if you're not creating or finishing that one thing, it's still going to be 0. So this one post that made all the money, it was one of, this is even pre-Write Every Day. I used to post when I was back in the design business, and I would post helpful stuff for my marketing clients. And I think this one was something like how to get the SMTP servers working correctly with your Outlook email using Google Mail. Like, boring, right? But then, but it was technically difficult to get this set up, and so it got a lot of traffic. Then Google, so I just wrote this really boring thing because I frankly didn't want to get on the phone and explain to my clients one by one, okay, you got to change your SMTP server to, at the 995 port. What 959? No, 995. 995. Oh, I don't want to do this ever again. And so I posted, I think I made a little video or something, how to do it all, and it was there, really boring. But it got traffic because it filled a need. It was, there's a vitamin and an aspirin, right? A vitamin is sort of, oh, it'll be good for you in the future at some point, maybe. And then there's aspirin, oh, I have a headache, I need it right now. So you're filling a pain need. And this was filling a pain need because who wants to know about SMTP servers and your Outlook and your Gmail? It's awful stuff. So I did that and I published it, and then Google had some deal where if you were some kind of reseller signed up for their affiliate program or whatever, I would make $15 if they signed up through my link. I go, whatever, click, I'll do that. And then I started getting checks every month. I go, oh, well, that's interesting. And my point as far as the numbers, and my point as far as every single day, my point as far as math and exponential growth is that if had I never written that post, that would be everything times 0. I wrote the post, and who knows which one's going to hit the jackpot. So this one hit the jackpot and got me all that earnings. I have hundreds of other terribly boring and technically helpful posts that did nothing as far as income, but that one did it. So my point then is, if you don't know which one it's going to be, and that's most of us, unless we're living in Vegas and doing really well, then at picking the numbers, then you got to get that out there. You got to get past the 0, create the 1, and then ideally create more, and so that you have the one chance that might hit it. But if you don't make that one chance, I can guarantee you're not going to hit it. If you don't get that one thing done, that could then multiply into something bigger.
Well, and speaking of multiplying into something bigger, you've had some success with series of books as well.
Yeah.
Tell us how that works.
Yeah. So we've also talked, Lori and I have also talked about, you have 1,000 true fans, and how to, what can you give your fans, the readers who actually like your stuff and they want more. How can you keep them? Because in any sales business, sales organization, any company, it's always easier to keep an existing customer than it is to get a new one. So, I just lost the train of thought.
What were we talking about?
Series, thank you. Wow, this is like Zoom.
You're not paying
Series.
attention though. Look at
They
that.
are, look at that.
Thank
Series,
you.
thank you. So series, if you're gonna get a fan, ideally you have more to give them than just the one thing. And so here, this is one book. It's a standalone book. There's not a book before. It's not a book after yet. And so, what would a fan of this book want? It's very simple. Another book. Or sure, there's peripheral things, an online course, a workbook, a sheet to print out, or maybe some sort of 30-day challenge to help you achieve your goal. But from a writer's perspective, I should and I will write more books as follow-up books. So in a series, you are basically one of the best marketing tools for a book is the next book. So because then that next book is new and fresh, and you get a new fan for the new book, and they say, oh, what else has this guy written? Oh, look, that book. And whether it's directly related or remotely related, it's another marketing quill in your arrows to go back and forth. And so then even better than 2 books is, guess what? 3 books. And the series going. And if I wanted to really make this a foundational brand, the Every Single Day brand, which it has sort of become, I get emails saying I've joined the ESD movement, and I even had 2.
You started a movement.
Yeah.
That's so cool,
Yeah.
Bradley. Congratulations.
Thank you. I even have on the original cover, was I had photoshopped an aspirin, and it was a real aspirin, with a little slice down the middle and everything, and I had ESD on it. And it's very close to LSD, I get it, and it's again sort of with the aspirin thing, and it's sort of with the, my sort of challenge was, if you could take a pill to go from your dreaming a dream to living a dream, would you do it? And of course, most people would say, well, sure, give me the pill. And I'd say, well, the good news and the bad news is there is no pill. The pill is your will. The pill is your decision. And of course, people are like, oh, I kind of wanted the pill.
Oh, yeah.
But the series, another just note on having a series, this also completely works for fiction. I mean, I just mentioned Harry Potter, and discussion is over, because how does that work? Well, you read 1, you're a huge fan, you want number 2. And if you're a fan, you're gonna read all of them. And then if you become a real fan, you're gonna read anything she writes, just because you're a fan of her writing, of her stories. But here, another marketing tactic is they say, write the book you'd like to read. And so for me, the book after this I'd like to read, there's a couple of them. One of them is Every Single Week, because if this is every single day, okay, great, but what are there tactics or strategies for on something basis, and sort of it gets sort of higher level thinking. If this is like the daily grind or the daily action, what is the weekly summary? So that could be probably be a short book every single week. Well, no, do this. But the one that excites me but also scares me is Every Single Day Kids. So I have two kids,
yeah.
12 and 14,
Yeah.
and we have meetings with the teachers. And my son says, he's 14, and he'll say, or the teacher will ask, we're in our annual parent-teacher conference, they'll say, okay, so you got a math test Monday, what's your study schedule? He's like, Sunday night? And I'm like, your father wrote a book called Every Single Day about how building up on a daily basis will eventually grow your knowledge exponentially. And he's like, Sunday night's good. What's wrong with that? I'm like, okay, he's 14. And so I'm currently researching and talking to kids, unfortunately outside of my own household, not getting much success there, who have some success with like an every single day habit. And so I would like to get on board kids like, for example, my own, to see the benefits of a daily practice and to see how you know what, dear son, your math will be easier, it'll actually be more fun, you will know it better, you'll know it more deeply, you'll know it for the final exam because you're not talking short-term memory anymore, you're talking long-term memory. It'll be there because you've been working at it every day, and it's not the big Sunday cram time. And he'll still say, okay, I'll just do more on Sunday. Okay, I think I've got to write the book. Because they say, write the book you want to read. That's the book I'd want to read.
Well, you have a unique situation with respect to this idea of series in that you've written in 3 different genres. You've got the young adult, you got this, and then the
paranormal.
Oh yeah. You also have the guidebook. That's 4 genres.
Guidebook, yes. Yeah.
So how do you think about positioning and branding yourself when you have so much going on that doesn't seem at first glance to relate?
Yeah. So I think this is the part that the die-hard authors don't like to hear, because it gets into what many call platform or brand, and you think, oh, and writers just think, oh, yuck, marketing and that kind of stuff. But I am writing in multiple genres, and then do I have a cohesive umbrella that's going to somehow bring them together? And I'm not saying that's the way it needs to be, but if you are the brand as the author, it'd be kind of nice if your books in some way had some overlap or some, at least, overarching umbrella. So for me, a lot of it comes from this book, because I see this book as, and this is how I see it now that I'm so far beyond. Speaking of brand, I have a brand called Repossible. And Repossible for me is is often sort of looking again at something. It's also doing it over and over. And so I'm looking at making the impossible, let's rework it, let's rethink it, let's redo it, making it possible. And this is how I see this book. I see it as this impossible dream that we think we can't achieve. I believe that it's very close to us. It's not that far, it's not that difficult, it's not that hard to reach. It's just, we sort of need a different set of glasses. We're just not focusing quite right. Mm-hmm. I see, when you're looking at you're in a store, or you're outside of a store, you're looking in the glass pane of the window, and you either see, depending on your focus, right, you see either sort of the reflection of yourself and behind you, and it's sort of that opaque reflection you're seeing in the glass. But then, like a movie set, you then focus your eyes, and now I can see through. Now I can see through to the inside of the store. Well, what did you do? You changed your focus or your depth of field, and now you can see different things. So I believe that the possibilities, it's just that pane glass window. And it's all right there. It's just beyond that pane glass window. But you just need to slightly alter your focus to achieve that. So I have a paranormal series as well, sort of paranormal suspense thriller. And my main character, he has this ability to see sort of beyond the pane glass. And he's sort of the fictional character from this book. He's living a life that's just beyond what he formerly thought was impossible. And now he realizes is possible, and he's kind of freaking out. He has sort of magical powers-ish, but what I like about it is that I like to think that we all have these, because this is, some people might think of this as magic, of reaching the dream that you've only been dreaming about. I need some magic to happen to make that happen. And that's what I'm working into my fictional character, because honestly, he's not that fictional. I think it really is just that step beyond, just that slight change in focus of going beyond that glass window and seeing what's inside. So, and with my kids' books, the kids' books, we started with those about 4 years ago, and what happened was I was sitting there with my kid, and I said, he was 8, and we're reading a book, and I said, well, that wasn't a very good book. And he said, well, why don't we write something better? And so, and here's external factors coming into play. This was something like March 3rd, 2014. And I remember it because you mentioned a travel book. April 1st, 2004, I had published a travel book. And now this is March something like 3rd, 2014. And when my son said that, I clicked back to the day, and I thought, that was 9 years ago. That was my last published book. And it hit me hard. It was pain in my heart to think that I, dreaming this dream of being a writer, but not acting on it, how long is it going to take? How much longer am I going to wait to make that dream a reality and stop dreaming the dream and start living the dream? And so with my 2 sons, we created a story. It's basically, we started walking home from school, dog's ball falls in a hole, dog goes after it, son goes after it, other son goes after it, I go after it, we go down this tunnel, this imaginary tunnel in San Francisco in the hills, and we made a story out of it. It's super short, and they would tell me what happened next. I'd write it out, and then I'd read it aloud to them at night. And I knew we were onto something when my youngest said, then what happened? And I said, well, you're creating the story. I don't know what happened, you tell me what happened. He's like, oh yeah. And he was creating from nothing. We had blank pages, and he was creating. But then he still didn't get it because he said, oh yeah. And he said, but what really happened? I said, I don't know, let's create that. Let's make that together, what happened next. And within 1 month, and I hit publish on April 1st, 2014, 10 years to the day from that first book. And is that book an award winner? No way. But it's a time capsule of my kids' imaginations at that point in their life. And one more
and
thing
then you did an audio.
Time capsule thing.
Yeah.
We did an audio book soon after. I had all the wrong equipment. I got background noise. I think there's a dog barking at one point, and I got rejected by the audiobook companies because of, not surprisingly, technical, specifications. Like, oh well. And I didn't know what I was doing enough back then to fix any of it, so I just abandoned it. But then in my gung-ho craziness efficiency of recent years, I finally fixed it. And so, but the killer was my 2 sons, at chapters 8 and 9, I said, all right guys, normally you tell me the story and I write it out however I think you wanted it to go, and then we sort of edit it. Right, you guys get free reign here, do whatever you want, and you write your own story. And so there's farting and aliens and spiders. They're awful chapters. They don't make any sense. They just ramble on. But then for the audiobook, they recorded them. So I have an 8-year-old voice and a 10-year-old voice, stamping in time this moment of them at that age. And so I finally got it through the technical specifications. I have to change some stuff. Still got the dog barking, but change some stuff, it got through. And so just like a month ago, it's through and live and available a whole bunch of audiobook companies. And so I just got a review the other day, and this guy said, well, couldn't really follow the story all that well, and the technical specifications, I don't know how that got through the audiobook companies. He says, but the fact that this guy wrote a book together with his kids, and then they read those chapters 8 and 9 together, he's like, forget all that other stuff, that's what made my heart melt, and this guy gets an A. And so it was really the meta story that was better than the story. And that's what a lot of this is about as well, because I started with my every single day writing, thinking, I mean, back then I was more of a techie marketing guy, right? I'm probably going to write books about how to build websites in WordPress or something awful. But as I was writing, your practice gets better and you're in shape, just like a marathon runner. And so I was getting more in shape and more used to it and more in the flow. And the flow would come more easily. And I got better and I got easier and I got more confident and I got just rolling. And so that's when I had no plans to write paranormal suspense fiction. I don't even know what that is. And so, but the fact that I was so much in shape, I mean, take the marathon runner who's running marathons on a regular basis. You ask him to run the 10K, and he's like, oh, is that it? No, and then what are we doing for breakfast? Because it's easy, because you're in shape. And so this, for me, was about getting in writerly shape and getting me to the point where I could write without fear, without hesitation, and then at some point it switches, and it doesn't cost you energy anymore, it provides you energy. And that was the point where I know, I'm done. This is all I needed. There's no stopping me. I am the snowball rolling down the hill. It's just getting bigger. It's just getting more momentum. And you cannot stop me. I am unstoppable writer. And that's thanks to every single day. The little pill.
One of the things I thought was really interesting was that you contend that we actually can force the flow.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
So I think there's these big myths about writing habits, about and writers love to not write. Writers love to talk about writing and not actually do it. Marketing, the dishes are more fun. Let me work on my taxes from 3 years ago. Make sure they were in proper shape. So, and then there's some who will say, I wait for inspiration to strike. I said, yeah, I wait for the lightning to hit me too, but it's probably not going to happen. Whereas I think, sure, if that's your thing, and if you just want to write just when inspiration strikes and it's just fun, then that's fine. But it kind of depends on your longer term goals. Do you want to just write and this is a fun once in a while thing you do? Like going to Hawaii? That's great, then just do that. But it depends on what your longer term goals are. If your longer term goals are, I want to write books, I want to be an author, I want to be a full-time author, go nuts. But then you think, well, I still need to wait for the flow. I'm at my best when I'm in flow state. Well, great. And you think, well, can you force that? I think you can. And I think through practice. We're back to the marathon runner. You think that guy wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I can't wait to run today. I'm just feeling peppy. No. There's days where he doesn't feel like it. He thinks it's going to be an awful day. He might have an awful day. He might have a terrible day running. I might have a terrible day writing. When I'm done with that writing piece, do I think, that was a total waste of time. I shouldn't have done that? No. Because in a terrible writing day, again, like the basketball shot, I probably learned more doing that bad writing than good writing. I went to a writer's conference, so now I live in Europe. It was a writer's sort of retreat. It was in Austria, in a castle. And there was nothing, nowheresville, middle of the hills in Austria. And there was nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. There were 6 people sitting at a big square table in this medieval castle. It's fantastic. I'm a morning guy, right? And there's several of these guys and gals were night owls. And so my very first day, I arrived in the morning, my very first day, it's 9 p.m., and I'm thinking, bed, my day's long over, especially my creative side. We have dinner, put all the dishes away, and we're sitting at the table, and they say, laptops come out. Whoa. And they say, all right, you guys ready for a writing sprint? The writing sprint is like 50 minutes, go, writing. I'm like, you mean now? I'm like, yeah, let's go. You ready? Got some tea, got some coffee? Let's go. I'm like, and no, let's go. And I'm thinking, well, I'm at a writing retreat. I guess I gotta go with this. And I did it. And I was beat, I was tired. I want to go to bed. But I cranked out some stuff, and it's probably terrible. But then, in a way, I got it out of my system. And I wake up in the morning, and I'm like, oh man, that bad stuff last night, there was a little gem in there. I'm going with that. And that's what I did. And even through what I considered a bad writing spell, you're always going to learn something. You got to keep your eyes open, your eyes and ears open for when that little gem's going to hit. But it's not going to hit if you're not doing it. It's not going to hit when there's no perspiration. The perspiration and inspiration and motivation. You can't create inspiration But through perspiration, you can create motivation. You can motivate yourself. You can force yourself to motivate, and then I believe that inspiration will come. Inspiration is more of a pull, but you can push motivation, and then they can meet.
You know, there's a Chuck Close, the painter Chuck Close, has a wonderful quote about inspiration. He says something like, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us show up and do the work." And I love that. I think whenever I'm thinking I'm just not feeling it, whatever, I just remember that.
Yeah.
You just got to do it.
Yeah.
We can open up. Anybody have questions for Bradley? I think it's time to open up for questions.
I have a question. You have these different book series. Are you self-publishing? Do you have a publisher? Did self-publishing lead you to a publisher? How do you get your books out into the world?
So, for example, it's here through Ingram Spark. And so Ingram Spark then can distribute to independent bookstores. It can also distribute to anything and everywhere else.
Libraries, gift
libraries,
shops,
yeah. Amazons, the Kobos, the Barnes and Nobles, the independents, the everythings. And so there are ways to get out there to publish anywhere and everywhere. And you can do this all yourself. You can do it through agent. You can do it through publishers, traditional route or more indie route or a combination of the two. Frankly, I think the real work comes after your book is out, because then there's the marketing of it. Sorry about that one. Yes.
John.
Did you have a following on your blog before you did this? I mean, did you have people who, knew your writing and sort of looked forward to it?
Quick answer, no. Yeah, a handful, but not like I should have, or not like I would have liked to have made it a whole lot easier. I think the following is critical in gaining early success, because, so we talk about the thousand true fans. The idea of 1,000 true fans is that you don't really need 1 million readers. You need 1,000 hardcore true fans who are going to buy and promote and love everything you do. Give you the reviews on the sites, and that's a huge step up especially to get that initial burst of sales and reviews and things that will help you then broaden your outreach to people who might not have seen you otherwise.
So do you have recommendations about how frequently to communicate with those people? With what breadth? Is it everything in your life, or just what you're reading, or just one genre, or how do you think about that communication?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and I think it's more of on a personal basis. I mean, it's what you like. They say good advice is talk to them like you would a good friend, and how often does this friend, ideally a friend who's interested in your work, how often would this friend who's interested in your stuff want to hear from you? What do they want to hear about? Also a good technique is ask them. You got a couple readers of your book, say, hey, what would you like to hear from me? What would you like more from my book? What can I do more? Do you want a next book? Do you want a course? What do you want? You want a paper, a handout? What do you want? Let me know. And ask that stuff. And they want interaction. They love that you're an author. I mean, especially in the we're very much writer world here. In the non-writer world, they think it's all, magic and wonderland, and very mystical and fantastic. And so they're interested in process as well. How do you create your characters? How do you come up with the research for your book? So even if you can just talk a little bit about the writing process, that's really fascinating. I mean, I don't think it's very fascinating at all. But they often, just like any job that you think is interesting or fascinating, and you have no idea how it works. What is it? Brain surgeon? Does he practice on his cat? I have no idea. I don't know. I'm really into cats. I don't even like cats. Especially there's 9 lives going, and we only have 1.
I steer you back to Lori's question of how do you know what your dream is?
How do you know what?
How do you know what your dream is?
Oh.
Some people are so lucky and they just know, and then other people search and search and search.
think it's another answer.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't think you know. I think your dream knows who you are. And that's, the dream finds you. You don't, it finds you.
So how can you get there? How can you get?
You remain present. You stay close and do nothing. I'm sorry, but we don't get up to our.
So I think we can take all these aspects. You say stay close and do nothing, or let's say that's not working, or you're getting impatient. Then I'm more action. I'm more take action towards what you think it might be, and gut feeling.
Obviously, things are more complicated. For instance, if you have to earn a living, and let's say you become an accountant, right?
Yeah.
But somewhere in you, there's an artist.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're going to be an accountant for 20 years, you're going to screw up any chance of being an artist.
Well, take the Khaled Hosseini example. Take the Khaled Hosseini example on the kite runner. He was a full-time physician, perfectly excellent job that he enjoyed very much. And he took these 2 hours every morning to give that a shot.
But he knew.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He at least knew, or he knew enough that he wanted it enough to give it a good, a real effort.
Right.
But yes, he did know at least something to get him up 2 hours earlier in the morning.
I think that 30-day experiment
Yes.
might be a good way to try it. I mean, it won't work for every kind of goal, but you might be able to break things down into smaller segments and try something for 30 days. That's not really quite what you're asking, though, is it, Ashok?
No.
I'm a complicated person.
No.
You know, if I could just throw one more in there. I have one chapter in this book on meditation. And I think that is also potentially a future book of mine, because I give it just a little bit in here, but meditation was for me one of my secret weapons. And I've only been into it recently, the past few years, but meditation for me is clarity. And my visual on it is, you know, you're in a lake, very clear lake, and you walk out a little bit, and you rustle up your feet, and all the sand is everywhere, but then you stay still for a minute, 3 minutes, and the sand slowly dissipates, and at some point it's clear again. You can see your feet perfectly, and the sand is crystal clear. That for me is meditation. So you rustle things up, you have a few moments of whatever your meditation is. You don't need, sit there and cross-legged for 29 minutes. It might be cycling through the woods. It's just a time where there is some quiet in your mind, and I think that sand settling is often a filter through which your dream may arrive on your toe.
Sorry, didn't agree.
Yeah, but I also just think like there's sort of this idea that there's one major dream
Yeah.
that's yours to have in life. I think there's levels of dreams.
Yes.
And there's tangible, concrete things that you'd like to achieve: a house, a great car, a boyfriend, a book. You want to write
Yeah.
a book.
Yeah.
But I think, in my experience, you can have a desired experience or feeling in your life that's a dream that doesn't have a name. And if you name it, you lose it. So I think there's more of a subtle driving, seeking motivation in your life that keeps you curious and open and alive. And you may never find a way to execute this thing because it's more of a way of being in your life. So I think when we get too obsessed with it must be this, it must be that, I want to be the bestseller and I want to be like blah, blah, blah. That's easy to fall on in a way, but it's good if you like writing.
Then I refer to practice is perfect. I am no longer seeking some bestseller status. Sure, that's nice, but I'm seeking more my daily practice. That's my goal, and every day I achieve it. Every day is a win.
I have two things. One is I had a dream. I grew up in warm weather, and I always loved snow, and I always wanted to ski, and I always wanted. And when I did it, it wasn't my dream anymore. So sometimes you gotta try it, and then it's not your dream. I mean, but the other thing is, you say every single day. When my children were little, like 3, 2 and 4, 2 and 5, I started teaching them a foreign language. And I would teach them, we would play, like with the dollhouse first, this is another doll, and we would converse in the language every night, like 15 or 20 minutes, every single day.
Wow.
And they became fluent in this language. And then I taught them to read and write, and it has a different alphabet, and they learned to read and write. And when they went out in the world, they understood what people were saying, you know, and people never occurred to them that they would understand, you know, because they would come home and say, you know, these things that they overheard of. But it was just every single day, we would play, and if they were too tired, and so we would just do charades. We'd act out words, and so then when they couldn't remember a word, I would do the charade and say the word, and then they learned the language. Just
Wow.
and then you see the schools teaching these children, and they don't have language skills. And here we had this little at home playing with the dolls in the dollhouse, and they became fluent in this language, and native speakers think they're native speakers, but they're not. You know.
See, you're incorporating play. I have an entire section of this book called play. And I think play is very important. Once you get past the struggle and the hard work and all that stuff, and if it's building, you're going to reach a point at the summit of the mountain where it's then going to go downhill, and you can achieve this play state, which I think that's the magic golden dust, because then it's fun, and then you're gaining energy instead of costing energy. That's the fun stuff. But you did that early with play. You incorporated learning, which they normally, if you had told them, all right, kids, we're going to learn Spanish now, they said, I don't want to do that. But you made it fun, made it play. And then, of course, it sinks in even more deeply, right? Because it's...
Well, that's what they do, you know.
Yeah. Wow, great.
So they got to the point where when as they got older, when in the car, they could only speak this language. That's why. So sometimes before they got in the car, they'd say, how do you say this? And then they would know. So we got to be
great.
car talk, you know?
Yeah.
And their father never spoke a word of it, not a word. But it was
That's fantastic
single
story right there.
day,
There we go.
Yeah.
every single day.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Michael, you had a comment earlier. Are we going to comment on something else?
Well, it was around an earlier conversation about, and you kind of addressed it, where this gentleman over here was talking about how do you know what your dream is. And I kind of think a lot of times you don't. Sometimes you think you know what your dream is, but like you said, you just have to go for it. You gotta try, and sometimes you fail, and sometimes you learn things differently. You know, I did the, I'm not gonna drink for 30 days. Every day I didn't drink until I got to day 9. So I went through that with 3.5 days. I'm not drinking. No, but seriously, I almost think it's like the myth of like the perfect spouse,
Yeah.
you know, the perfect partner. Well, there's not the one so much as a lot of possible people that you can work with, and I think you know there's a lot of possible dreams you can work with, and so you think about what you really want, and you try it, and you go for it, and you're like, yeah, this is really working, or no, it's not. And that's easier, so much easier to say than to actually do it. It really is, and I'm not sure why. Because like you said, you know, the pill example, you think, well, everybody wants to fulfill their dreams, so why, that's a really interesting question. Why aren't we more going for that? I'm not sure.
It's scary too. No, it's scary.
Yeah.
Well, and what if you find out you don't like the snow, and then your dream is gone?
But also,
That's a good point.
sort of with the failure, if I think my dream has evolved as well. If my dream were to be, #1 bestseller, or sell 1 million copies or whatever, well, then I'm a failure. But that's not my dream. My dream is to write every day. So it's kind of check. It's easy.
You're focusing on the doing
Yes.
of the task rather than on the potential result.
Yes. Focus on jogging around the block every day instead of the marathon. But then the secret side benefit is that, guess what? I'm going to be in shape for the marathon.
Todd, you.
I can relate to a lot of things you're saying. I mean, when I was about 21, I decided to become a writer, and that surprised me because I'm a visual artist. When I was a kid, I hardly read anything, didn't even read comic books. They were nothing to me, until I suddenly discovered Poe and Dickens and realized the power of words were, like atoms begetting atoms that beget molecules when you uniquely link, they form a DNA of indelible visions. And so I started seeing words as an art form, and And, you know, I was reading it voraciously and loved some of the stuff I was discovering and was frustrated. And I realized when I started to write my first book, I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I realized what I was searching for is the book that wasn't out there. It was only inside of me. So, you know, and so you have to kind of explore it, and that's why I started writing, continue to write.
So you had to create your dream.
Yeah, you have to create your dream. And so I just realized I was frustrated because I liked this novel, but it just didn't quite work for me fully, and I didn't like this and this, but you take certain aspects of what you know, you're searching for, and you realize, oh, I like this book because of that, and I like this aspect, and so that kind of evolved into the subject matters that I write.
Yeah. That reminds me, I think it's Rodin, the sculptor, who said there's a big block of marble or whatever he works in, and he says, I need to let what's inside, escape. I just need to chip away at what's in there, but it's inside because I'm like, yeah, that's a big block of marble, all right.
Well,
I don't know what's in there.
Actually, it's one of my epigraphs of this book is I carved,
Remove the extras.
I carved until I set the angel free.
Yeah. Wow, good stuff.
Anything else?
I don't know about this word dream.
Yeah.
It sounds a little too pat. I mean, I'm a writer, I have no problem writing. I might have a problem marketing because it's just not my forte, but I'm happy to be a writer, even though living in San Francisco, it wasn't the best choice because it's hard to survive, but
Yeah.
I don't wake up and say I'm living the dream. I wake up and say I'm really happy despite all the challenges and things that make me unhappy. So I suggest you find another.
Well, let's talk about that because I completely agree. I think dream has different meanings for different people.
Like a marketing term.
Yeah. Well, what other, just based on tonight, based on what you're thinking, where this might go, what might you say?
Well, I really feel like I have what you're promoting is the autonomic writing system, where you can't not write every day.
Okay.
And it's just a physiological need. It's not a dream. I don't wake up and say I'm gonna live the dream. I wake up and I do my ritual outdoor exercise and think, what am I gonna work on today? And it's this writing, that writing, and it's sometimes real high and it's sometimes a struggle. And I think it's the dream you're talking about, but that word wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
So
pursuing the automatic writing system?
it's like breathing. I can't stop myself from breathing, and I can't stop myself from writing. It's just, and I don't necessarily write, I have a folder called unpublishable, because I keep writing things that nobody wants to publish. Although I have in the past, before the internet, before blogs, before crowdsourcing, I published quite a bit. So I keep writing because there's momentum in my life. That's all I know how to do to make money.
So what I'm hearing, you're already there, right? And so I think maybe.
Well, there is there. Wherever I am, I'm perfectly content.
Then that's awesome. And that's great. Check. Perfectly content. For me, this came out of a deep discontent. I was not at all living the dream. It was terribly unhappy.
So for me, living the dream would be to learn math.
Lots of math in here. Secretly stuffed in.
Really, sometimes I think I should learn another thing to do. Well, okay, I have a little recreational thing I do for my. No, it's not what you think.
Dig a hole.
Teaching tango.
So
What do you call it?
I've had several. I worked on many subtitles for this book, and the original, like I said, was the pills, and the pills did not go over well with the bigger public. I had a typical author, this is the best cover ever, and I had the aspirins on there with the ESD, right? And my subtitle at that time was a simple prescription for transformation. I really liked it, but the pills didn't go over well because I mean, I'm asking total strangers in like focus groups and stuff, and they're like, is this, a medical book, or, what is this? And it just wasn't clear, even though the calendar days, it's not immediately clear either. Sort of, check boxes and, okay, it must be something, efficiency related. But the pill, it was also over-promising. And that was part of my sort of internal joke, was that, hey, you want a transformation in your life, here's the magic pill. And of course, by chapter 4, I have a chapter called The Pill, and the big downer is that there is no pill. But with the transformation, so you're talking about the dream, and I agree. Dream is not my favorite term for this either. I like transformation, but then, again, in here I talk about a butterfly. You're this cocoon, this blob caterpillar thing, and then wow, you're this, for me, that's transformation. You're this blob of goo, and then you're this beautiful butterfly.
Well,
So,
Bernie, I have to say, that despite all I just said, that I am so inspired and impressed by you, because I know it's been a few years since you had this epiphany. Which is an inside joke for you.
Yeah.
But an epiphany is something that happens quick and it's over, but you are still on the peak. You have not plateaued, and maybe you never will. And I think I'm very happy for you and impressed, and that you share this, and that you're so open about it. And if you want to call it your dream, that's
no, but I like talking about it because I agree there could be, maybe the term is just different for everybody.
Is it living the goal? Is that any better? Because the goal is that you be satisfied in every moment of your practice.
Yeah.
And so
Well, you
if
got
you're living
satisfied in
the
there.
goal. The goal is you're living. You're not striving for the goal. You're actually living it on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's any
Talking
better.
about dreams, one of the Jung has been a big influence to the collective unconscious, and I found as a writer that first 25 years I wrote 3 failed novels, fell on my face, thought they were terrific, embarrassed myself, I think, in front of friends and family for reading it. Continued on and written 3 novels after that actually are good. And coming to your point, I was having kids, I was rebuilding a house, I took a hiatus off for 5 years, didn't write anything, so I'm never gonna find the time. One morning I woke up, Thanksgiving morning, I said, if I don't sit down and start writing this book that I had in my head, it'll never happen. I did exactly, every day just wrote and finished that thing. But coming back to the dream things, what I found is a writer is the subconscious aspect. I love when I'm working on a book, being in training, falling asleep, waking up. There's those moments where everything starts to connect. You're in a state of just meditation, calmness, and all the things you've been working on start, what's the old cliche, seeing the forest for the trees or whatever. It's like you see how the connections are working and how they're not working, and I just found that I practice that, and it's finding, it's tapping into the collective unconscious. I think.
Yeah.
We have about time for a few more questions.
Okay, thanks for the heads up. Yeah.
Members the opportunity to purchase Bradley's book if they want. There are 2 copies here. There's one by register, and so that you have time to sign. And then you'll have a little bit more time to chat before the store closes at 9, but the cafe will be open for you.
Okay, terrific.
After the store closes.
Okay, so a few more questions, and
Yeah, I'd be curious now about environmentally how you write in terms of your context at home or wherever you write. In my case, I usually use headphones and I listen to music, not heavy metal, believe me, but something kind of softer. But the other part of it is I've always wanted to learn the piano, so I treat my keyboard like I feel like I'm playing the piano, even though I don't know anything about playing.
Yeah.
But it adds a little bit of a happiness to the process. And for me, except of course when nothing is coming up here.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to know if you have any tools of the trade that you.
So my kid, my oldest was a year old or something. Got him in the little carry thing. I think we're in Home Depot, and we're about to walk by this like massive circular saw. And I see the guy putting on his earphones and the goggles, And I'm like, oh no, that thing's about to turn on. Those things are so loud, right? And so as I'm walking with my son, I'm thinking, you know what? He's got to get used to sleeping through loud noises, and not only sleep when there's perfect darkness and absolute still. And so, all right, we're going for it. And we're gonna walk by, and sure enough, the guy, cranks on his machine, gets, and then he puts the wood up, it's crazy noise. And my son, sort of shaken, but I watch him, and then he sort of falls back into sleep, right? And so I'm trying to prep him to be anywhere and be able to sleep if he's tired. So I take that same stance with writing. Anywhere where my fingers are on a keyboard, I'm at home. And so I like to think I can do it anywhere, because I am in lots of places. And I have my fingers on the keyboard. And only recently, since that Austria week-long retreat, there are five or six of us, and they all had headphones and listened to music and stuff. And I basically did it because otherwise I'm hearing they're seeping out of their headphones, and I didn't want to hear that. So I did start with music recently, and now I like it, because that even more in my zone, in my closed off world, got my fingers on the keyboard and I'm something. And I really found that, and again, like I said, I'm a big morning guy, so I'm big in the mornings, and I don't even pretend to write after like 3 p.m. because it's just a waste of my time, unless I feel like writing bad stuff to learn more from the next day or something. But it's first thing in the morning or too late, I missed it. And so it's pretty much first thing in the morning.
You go to bed like at 10 or something?
I go to bed really early. I'm first to go to bed in the family, that's for sure. And so, my 12-year-old stays up later than I do. And they all make fun of me for it incessantly. So, early morning, just find your time. When's your time? When's your peak efficiency time? But then also just stop with don't let the outside world bug you. My wife says, oh, I can't work in those busy cafes. I'm like, I can work anywhere. I was in the car last night. We're driving home. We're sitting in traffic. My wife is driving. I've got my laptop, finishing up something, because I can do it anywhere. And I think that's key, because otherwise, I'm really not into excuses. I just think excuses are excuses, and I don't fall for them. And so, sure, there's real ones. My hands got chopped off. That's gonna hurt. But oh, I can't write. That's true. It's true. Dictation solves that right there. See, there you go. Hands chopped off.
No excuses.
Come on.
Okay, well, Bradley's book is out at the counter, so if you want to pick up a copy, he's here now. He's here from Europe. This is your big chance.
Leaving tomorrow morning.
He's here now and can sign it for you.
Holland. Thank you so much.